Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar brought to you by Women in Successful Careers, WISCA, in collaboration with Sage Innovation Center and Neem Foundation. In March 2020, in collaboration with Shocks Media, WISCA hosted a screening of the documentary Money Marriage, drawing attention to the abhorrent practice of giving young girls away to offset debts in a certain community in Cross River State. In May 2020, in commemoration of Children's Day, so exactly a year ago, we took forward the conversation by exploring the theme Child, Not Bride. And this was a conversation about early child marriage in Nigeria and the attendant consequences for the girl child. As part of our advocacy for 2021, WISCA wishes to continue to put forward the agenda and the importance of educating the girl child, preparing her for a future where she can aspire to contribute her own quota to nation building. WISCA is especially concerned about ensuring that no child is left behind in terms of access to education and many, many more. Early marriage of girls truncates their education and opportunity to actualize their full potential. We also note that the Child Rights Act, which offers protection against early marriage, is yet to be domesticated in 11 states of the Federation. So since 2018, WISCA has been mobilizing support and awareness against child marriage to ensure that all girls are afforded the opportunity to access primary and secondary school education. We accordingly mark this National Children's Day by continuing the conversation on child marriage and highlighting the new drivers of child marriage in Nigeria. And I think in the rush to kick off the webinar, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Fabia Ogumekon, and I am the Executive Director of WISCA Women in Successful Careers. And I will be your host for this event today. So and chairperson of WISCA, the convener of this event. And after I do that, I will call on her to give her welcome and opening remarks. Amina Oyagbola is an independent director. She's the managing consultant of AKMS Consulting and senior partner Oyagbola Chambers. She was a former top executive at MTN Nigeria and brings her varied and rich experience to bear on several boards. With more than 35 years experience, her career spans legal consulting, banking and finance, energy and telecommunications. A passionate advocate for diversity and inclusiveness, she is the founder of Women in Successful Careers. And Women in Successful Careers, for those who may not know, is a not-for-profit, non-governmental organization focused on gender empowerment and strategic mentoring and leadership for professional women and career women. Amina is a fellow of the Africa Leadership Initiative West Africa, part of the Aspen Global Leadership Network. She's a fellow of the Institute of Directors, a member of the CIPM and chartered fellow of the CIPD UK Personnel Development and Management Organizations. And she is a Chevening Scholar and a certified ethics officer. It gives me great pleasure and delight to invite Mrs. Oyagbola to give her welcome remarks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Fabia, for that wonderful and warm introduction this morning. I hope my my internet access will hold out because I'm out of the country at the moment. I'm so excited about this forum that has been beautifully put together by WISCA and all our collaborators. I'd like to start by saying a very, very warm good afternoon to everyone, and to also lend my voice to the very warm welcome that Fabia has given to this National Children's Day dialogue, which we have nicely themed Climate Change and COVID, the new triggers, child marriage in Nigeria, and the way forward. I'd like to start by recognizing our esteemed panelists and partners that have made this event possible. Madam Patience Ekeoba, National Programs Officer, UN Women Nigeria, Professor Mustafa Hussein Ismail, Director, Center for Human Rights in Islam, Nazanin Alakija, founder, SAGE Innovation Center, our partners in actually conceptualizing this event today. Mino Dwaman, forgive me, Mino, if I didn't pronounce your name correctly, Program Officer, NEEM Foundation, also our collaborators for this event. Olamide Akin Alabi, a lawyer and child rights advocate, and one of our future leaders, bright stars, I'm very proud to have on this platform with us today. Amina Yuguda, our own Beijing Plus 25 Eaglet and Powerhouse and BBC award-winning journalist. And our technical support team, without whom we wouldn't be able to have this conversation, Wild Fusions, who have supported Whisker for many, many years. You know, and I'd like to seize the opportunity this morning to say a very, very big thank you to Wild Fusion for all the support that they have rendered to us and continue to do. And finally, and most importantly, our esteemed participants and audience on this platform this morning, who are all extremely busy people, but have chosen to spend their time this afternoon with us on this important conversation. Thank you very much, all of you, for being here today to lend your voices to this important issue and subject matter that affects women and girls, and indeed our nation. It's a subject matter that should be of concern to every Nigerian and everyone across the globe. Let me make an attempt this morning to try to set the tone by sharing some alarming statistics with you. You know, sometimes we have conversations around a topic all the time, but the stats are not, you know, glaring, and they're not known and are not at our fingertips. And it's always useful during conversations like this to try and put those numbers on the table so that we know what it is, and we understand, we can size the problem and begin to try to tackle it in bite sizes. Did you know that nearly 650 million girls and women globally were married in childhood as young girls? 650 million, almost a billion, with 50% of that number residing in Bangladesh, Brazil, Ethiopia, India, and sadly, Nigeria. While there are a number of reasons why child marriage began and persists, the vast majority of child marriages are rooted in, guess what, gender inequality, and the belief that girls and women are inferior to boys and men. The situation is made even worse, of course, by poverty, by lack of education, harmful social and cultural norms and practices, and insecurity. Its drivers vary between communities, naturally, and regions and countries. And while Nigeria has made some inroads in creating awareness about child marriage in the nation and the harm it does to young girls forced to marry before they are physically and mentally ready to do so, the change we want to see cannot come fast enough. According to a 2016 UNICEF report, an estimated 44% of girls in Nigeria are married before their 18th birthday. And Nigeria has one of the highest rates of child marriage in the world. I repeat that Nigeria has one of the highest rates of child marriage in the world. The Child Rights Act, which Olamide Akin Alabi will briefly take us through today, prohibits child marriage by stating that any marriage that a child takes part in shall be considered unlawful because children are not capable of being a part of a valid marriage contract. Child marriage, however, continues to be a divisive topic, and it is practiced across our country. In Cross River State, which Fabia referenced in her comments, And elsewhere in the country, we see young girls being married off to offset family debts and to reduce family costs, like chattel. In the northern states of Nigeria, over 50% of girls marry before the age of 15. Before the age of 15. This not only denies girls their human rights, but also perpetuates the cycle of poverty and inequality for entire communities and countries. Poverty and underdevelopment have been identified as enablers of this harmful and unlawful practice. For this reason, child marriage is more than twice as likely to occur in the rural areas and over 3 times more prevalent amongst the poorest demographic in Nigeria. The continuation of child marriage also goes against the Sustainable Development Goals that all countries have signed up to. And I just want to touch on a few of those goals. Goal 1, which is really about the eradication of poverty, and Goal 4, which is about provision of quality education. The truth is, and the reality is, that when girls drop out of school to get married early before they have completed their education, the effect of that is that the chain of poverty continues, and they are not empowered with the skills or the education to make a decent living and lift themselves out of poverty. With Goal 5, which is about good health and well-being, again, here, child marriage gives room for sexual abuse and early child pregnancy, which can lead to mental and physical health issues, including vesicovaginal fistula and other diseases. Goal 5, which is about gender equality, the truth is gender equality cannot be achieved if there is essentially no equal opportunity, no equal access, no choice, and girls are treated as second-class citizens and valued less simply because of their sex and gender. While declining numbers of child marriages and resulting increases in the average marriage age around the world reflect the success of strategies implemented to eliminate this awful and odious practice by attacking the root causes like poverty, cultural traditions, religious and social pressures, illiteracy, and so on. New triggers and drivers are emerging, which are reversing the progress that has been made. And one of these triggers is climate change. Climate change is arguably one of the largest threats to global development and security. When we think about climate change, we might, most of us, picture rising sea levels, scarce resources, natural disasters, and conflict. But increasingly, anecdotal evidence suggests that climate change is also driving rates of child marriage around the world and is also driving, food insecurity. When floods, droughts, natural disasters, and conflict force farmers in rural areas out of work by destroying their crops, livestock, and homes, many migrate to other areas in search of employment, in search of shelter, in search of food, where the cost of living is much higher. This often puts pressure on family finances, and parents begin to consider marrying off their children to gain financial security for their families. Climate migration has been quietly driving an increase in child marriage in the shadows. And in the last 18 months, COVID-19 has exacerbated the situation. On International Women's Day, a UNICEF report warned that school closures, economic stress, service disruptions, pregnancy, and parental deaths due to the pandemic are putting the most vulnerable girls at increased risk of child marriage. to offset the impact of COVID-19 and end child marriage by 2030 in line with the Sustainable Development Goals, it is critical that we begin to spotlight these issues so that we can accelerate progress in addressing them. As part of our gender advocacy, WISCA wishes to take the important conversation it started in 2018 forward, because the future of a WISCA, namely a woman in a successful career, starts and begins with the girl child and her access to equal opportunity and the chance and opportunity given to her to have a fair and future-proof start in life. We can only truly celebrate Children's Day when all our children are healthy, their well-being is protected and catered for, and when they have unfettered access to safe primary and secondary school education, so that we leave no one behind. Our objectives today on this webinar are to, 1, create more awareness about child marriages and the new drivers and triggers of child marriage in Nigeria. Secondly, to present an overview of the Child Rights Act and key legislation that support this advocacy. Thirdly, for us to examine and assess national progress on child marriage. And lastly, for us to leverage Children's Day and use this particular occasion to educate the Nigerian public on this harmful practice affecting children and our nation, so that we can bring an end to it. Once again, and to bring my opening remarks to a close, I would like to again thank all our esteemed panelists for being here to share from their wealth of experience and insights. We look forward to a very, very rich and lively discussion and conversation, but more importantly, concrete suggestions and actions that we all can take, to move the agenda forward and to bring an end to child marriage in Nigeria. I thank you all very much for listening, and I look forward to listening to all of you distinguished personalities that are here with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Arabella, for your welcome remarks and for very nicely opening and stating our objectives and the reason why we are gathered here. So without further ado, I would also now like to ask Olamide Akinlabi to kindly share her screen and take us through an overview of the Child Rights Act and other laws that govern this issue in Nigeria. Also, again, very briefly setting the framework for the conversations that the panel will be having in about 10 minutes or so. Olamide is a lawyer and child rights advocate. She's a dynamic young lady with strong interest in child rights advocacy, and also expresses herself in many parts as an OAP on-air personality and also MC at events. She engages mostly on topics around youth development. Welcome, Olamide, and the floor is yours. We've got just under 10 minutes, please. Olamide.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ogunlekon, for the introduction, and thank you, WISCA, for having me, in the dialogue today. It's a very, very interesting one, and I'm looking to learn a whole lot from it. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're joining from. As earlier introduced, my name is Olamide Akinlabi, and I would be giving a very brief overview of the Child's Rights Law with focus on child marriage prohibition. And to put this in context, I would be starting with the laws in operation regarding child marriage in Nigeria. Give me a minute. I'm having slight issues with my slides. Okay, beautiful. So we have the statutory law, which comprises of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We have the Matrimonial Causes Act. We have the Child's Rights. We have the Child's Right Act. We have the criminal law, which operates in the southern part of Nigeria. And we have the penal code, which operates in the northern part of Nigeria. We also have the Sharia law, which governs Islam, mostly practiced in the northern part of Nigeria. We also have, but not the least, the customary law, which comprises the customs and traditions of various tribes as we have in Nigeria. So having said all this, we need to, ask ourselves, who exactly is a child? What do the laws say about who a child is? And we would be taking that firstly from the Grundnorm, which is the Constitution of Nigeria. And Section 29 of the Constitution states that a person, an individual who is of full age is a person who is age 18 and above. Okay, so going on to the Child's Right Act, in the definition section, it states that an individual who is below the age of 18 is a child. So obviously there is a nexus here, there is a connection here, and they both agree that the determining age is age 18. Having said that, just like every contract, the marriage contract also has its requirements, and one of which is capacity. And under capacity, we have age. So we need to understand what exactly is a marriageable age. And it is interesting to note that the Marriage Act does not specifically state what the marriageable age is. However, Section 3 of the Matrimonial Causes Act states clearly that when either of the parties who wants to get married, when either of them are not of marriageable age, such a marriage is void. So we still want to answer the question of what is the marriageable age, and a combined reading of the 1999 Constitution and the Child's Right Act makes us understand that it would be from age 18 and above. I should note here that there has been a discussion as to the subsequent provision of Section 3 of the Matrimonial Causes Act, which states that anyone who is not 21 years of age but wants to get married can do so as long as he or she has the consent of the parents. The discussion around this is, does it imply that someone below 13, 14, or someone generally below the age of 18 can get married once he or she has the consent of parents? Once again, looking at the Constitution and the Child's Right Act, this is not the case. What that provision is saying is that if an individual is age 18, 19, 20, and wants to get married, he or she can go ahead as long as he or she has the consent of their parents. So we want to focus now on the Child's Right Act. What does the Child's Right Act say about child marriage? And Section 21 states that no person below the age of 18 is capable, once again, the word capable, of contracting a valid marriage. Whoever does that should know that such a marriage is null and void. And the following section on the following section of that same act states that no guardian or parent can betroth a child, and it's interesting to know that there are consequences for this because it makes it a crime. And the consequence is liable upon conviction. Such an individual who is caught violating Section 21 or Section 22 of the Child's Right Act is liable to a fine of 500,000 naira or a term of imprisonment of 7 years. And if the judge is so moved, such an individual is or can be liable to both the fine and the term of imprisonment. We really need to take a pause right now and look at the current realities in terms of domestication of the Child's Right Act. And so, because the Child's Right Act is under the is an item under the residual list and not an item under the concurrent list, it means that the different states of the Federation are bound to, are not bound, pardon me, to actually domesticate the provisions of the Child's Right Act. And every state that has done so has simply done so based on their own discretion. And it is for this reason that, for example, a state like Katsina, can decide to modify the content of the Child's Right Act, to suit its purposes. And it has been reported that this Katsina State Child's Right Law infers that the responsibility is on the parents to determine whether or not a child is of marriageable age. So the parents would organize some form of counseling to gauge the maturity age of the child to determine whether he or she is of marriageable age. We also need to discuss the challenges preventing the absolute prohibition of child marriage. And first on the list is currently, as stated earlier in the keynote address, is that only 26 states have domesticated the Child Rights Act, 26 states, including casino states. And with the exception of Enugu State, all the other states are northern states. Also, the enforcement of Sharia law on children, particularly in the northern states. And last but not the least is the discretionary power left to the legislative and executive of states in terms of domesticating the tenets of the Child Rights Act. At this point, we need to ponder on some very, very cogent questions. And the first is, should the Child Rights Act be under the exclusive list of the Schedule 3 of the 1999 Constitution? And if yes, how will that bring about effectiveness and efficiency of implementation, which is all we are actually driving at? The second is, instead of the exclusive list, should the Child Rights Act be brought under the concurrent list such that both the federal and the state governments can legislate over the matter? However, in case of a disparity, it is the provision of the federal government that would supersede that of the state government. And also, we need to ask ourselves, is the Child Rights Act or Child Rights Law adequate as it is now to prevent child marriage? If no, what can be added or removed from the provision or statutes, and not just the Child Rights Act or the Child Rights Law. Like I said earlier, we have other laws regarding children. So what can be removed or added to these laws to further prohibit or limit incidences of child marriage in Nigeria? I am really looking forward to a robust discussion. I'm really looking forward to be totally enlightened on cogent steps that we can take to actually preventing and prohibiting child marriage in Nigeria. Thank you once again for your time. My name is Olamide Akinlabi, and I would be glad to have further discussions to olamideakinlabi@gmail.com. Thank you very much, and over to you, Fabia.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Olamide, for that bubbly and lively presentation of an ordinarily dry, subject in the terms of, delivering a legal presentation, but you managed to make it lively and, interesting for us, and not just interesting, but create the awareness that we hope, it's so important to understand as we go into the conversations now with the panel, what the legal framework is that actually, governs this very important subject. So I'm going to invite Amina Yuguda, who is our moderator. We're going into the panel session now. Amina Yuguda is a journalist and a media professional. She is our Beijing Plus 25, one of our Beijing Plus 25 eaglets, and an award-winning BBC Komla Dumont Award for Africa Journalism recipient 2017, amongst many other accolades and things that she does. I will allow her to say a few words about herself and also as she brings the panel on board. Over to you, Amina.
Good afternoon, Ms. Fabia and all participants here today. It's a pleasure for me to be hosting or moderating this very important webinar. I want to thank Women in Successful Careers for this opportunity. It is a really important and critical subject matter. I, in particular, am really concerned with the child marriage sort of shadow pandemic because I'm from northern Nigeria and this is an issue that's close to my heart. So thank you once again for the opportunity. On this note, I'd like to mention that towards the end of the session, we'll have a special gift to be given to some participants. So please stay tuned and stay involved and active in the conversation. Also, we have a special session where we'll hear a true life story from a child marriage survivor So it's a special panel session and of course a sort of case study interlude. Before we proceed any further, I'd like our panelists, I'm going to give you the opportunity, 2 minutes each, to talk about briefly what they do and introduce themselves to us. Who better to introduce themselves than the panelists themselves? So I would start with Madam Patience Ekeoba. So please, ma'am, if you could introduce yourself to us.
Good afternoon, everyone. I thought I had switched on my camera. I can't seem to. Whoa, sorry. Hello?
We can hear you, ma'am.
Oh my God, I don't know what is showing on my screen. Oh my goodness, what's happening? Oh, it's your screen.
Oh yes,
okay.
That's my screen.
I mean, it's your screen. I actually put on
systems.
my, okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Let me thank the founder of WISCA, Madam Amina Oyagbola. Thank you so much, Ma, for inviting me to this event. I also want to thank all the panelists, the resource persons. It's a pleasure to be here. I've switched on my camera, but at a point I'll have to put it off because of poor network where I am. But just to say that I'm really delighted to be here, and I bring you greetings from UN Women. We're always very delighted to participate in events like this because it provides us opportunity to also add our voices to the advocacy to end all forms of violence against women, children, all obnoxious practices. So it's always a privilege. Thank you for having me. And I also bring you greetings from my principal, Ms. Comfort Lamptey. She's excited about this, and I'll be giving her feedback how this conversation goes. So my name is Patience Ekeoba. I'm the National Program Officer for UN Women. I call myself the general practitioner because I happen to have the privilege of working with a lot of colleagues in the office. But in terms of what I do mostly is I work with government and different stakeholders to ensure that global standards that the United Nations has set are adopted and implemented. So I work a lot with the Ministry of Women Affairs and both at the national and state level. I also do a lot of coordination work. Currently, I'm the secretary for the Development Partner Group on Gender in Nigeria, which is the biggest umbrella group on gender. I also do a lot of representational work, working with partners, women groups, civil society, and the rest of them, just to make sure that our advocacies around these issues are amplified. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm glad that Madam Oyagbola has already set the tone for this conversation. She's made it very easy. Look, I mean, she's been able to give us all the statistics. So I'm hoping that the rest of us will be able to actually add our voices to concrete, really giving out concrete solutions on how we can deal with this pandemic, let me call it that. Before I stop, I'd like to also thank Professor Mustafa, who has agreed to be part of this conversation. When Fabia called me, I said, look, this conversation cannot be complete until we have one of our male champions who is actually doing us very good across the world, not just in Nigeria. So I want to thank him and thank every other panelist for being here, and hopefully we'll be able to come up with, solutions that can help us change the current narrative around child marriage in Nigeria. Thank you very much. And
thank
over
you,
to
ma'am,
you.
for that. Yeah, thank you, ma'am, for that very brief introduction to who you are and what it is that you do in terms of the UN structure in Nigeria. And you've already mentioned our next participant, so I would like to call on Professor Mustafa Ismail to give us a brief introduction. Just 2 minutes, sir. 2 minutes, sir, for your brief introduction about who you are and what it is that you do.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Mustafa Hussein Ismail. I am a classroom teacher in Bayero University, Kano, teaching media Arabic, Arabic for special purposes, and classical Arabic language. I also happen to be the founder and director of Center for Human Rights in Islam, based in Kano, a center that was established 21 years ago when Sharia criminal code was reintroduced in the north. A number of women were arrested and accused of committing adultery. Safia Hussein from Sokoto, Amina Lawal from Katsina, and others. By that time, being a student of Sharia, right from my early days in primary, secondary, and now university, being a student of Sharia, I felt that something went wrong. More especially that woman was screaming, calling for somebody who, according to her, was or is God-fearing to come to her assistance. So I went back to the scriptures, Sharia books, Quran, prophetic traditions. We were able in the center, or my humble self, to fish out about 12 grounds of appeal for Safia Hussein. And we pursued the appeal case for 1 year. And the judges in the Upper Sharia Court in Sokoto saw the grounds of appeal and upheld 9 or 8 from the grounds of appeal we offered. Based on that, they discharged and acquitted Safia Hussein Tungar Tudu. We did the same with Amina Lawal case in Katsina. That was in 2000. And we thought over it. We said, let's create a center that will provide a place where women and children can take their cases when they are violated. And from that day, the center has been in existence. Women, not only from Kano, but from other parts of the country, not only Muslim women, but even Christians, they come to seek redress from the center. We attend to their cases, and if they need lawyers, we go to the Legal Aid Council to provide lawyers for them. And before I hand over the microphone now to you, let me tell you one thing. Islam, right from inception, as we read from the scriptures, from the Noble Quran, from the prophetic traditions, from the deeds and sayings of the companions of the prophets, is a religion based on, is a gender-based or gender-concerned religion. This is why you have the second or one of the longest chapters in the Quran dedicated to women. They call it Surah An-Nisa, the women. And also you have another chapter dedicated for divorce in order to safeguard the interests of women in the event of divorce. They call it At-Talaq, the divorce, and several verses in the Quran. So you can see that Islam also is a rights-based religion, granting a number of rights for women in that chapter. So this is what we do currently. We listen to women, no matter how poor, no matter how rich, no matter what religion they do, we listen to them. We provide solutions to their complaints. Even we take cases to court on their behalf. So this issue of girl-child marriage I think when it comes to discuss the discussions, we'll see wonders. Even in those days, when young girls were forced to marry people they did not like or they did not love, they took the cases to courts during the lifetime of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the marriages were annulled and considered void. So as far as Islam is concerned, this issue of girl-child marriage, Islam has a clear position on it. Normally, girl-child marriages are forced marriages. We will show evidences whereby Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, asked parents and his followers, whenever they married off their daughters, they should seek their consent. They should allow them to be mature enough. And I wouldn't like to preempt my presentation or my answers to the questions you posed to me. Here, this comment or these words are enough to tell you who we are in the Center for Human Rights in Islam. And I feel honored. And I appreciate your efforts to have me on board. Thank you very much once again. Thank you much.
Thank you so much, Professor. We are indeed very grateful to have your personality and for you to bring diversity to this conversation. There are a lot of just a minute. My apologies, I have to mute myself on one of the systems. So my apologies for that technical glitch. So we thank you, Professor Mustafa Ismail, for the diversity you're bringing into this conversation. There are a lot of misconceptions about the role of the North and the Islamic injunctions as regards early marriage. And we believe that you will give us a very interesting and detailed insight into what the real situation is in the Sharia and indeed in Islamic jurisdictions. So we're grateful for you being part of this conversation. Next, we have Ms. Naza Alakija. So Ms. Naza, if you could give us in 2 minutes, a brief introduction of yourself and what it is that you do.
Thank you so much, Amina. And thank you so much, Whiskar and everybody on the panel today. I'm super excited to be here and to have discussions on such an important topic that lays very close to my heart. My name is Naza Alakija. I am the founder of Sage Innovations. We are a non-governmental organization that predominantly focuses on deploying and developing climate resiliency within the most marginalized communities. We see it as one of the most threatening issues of our time that's unraveling a lot of the development gains that we have made, especially in Nigeria. And I'm very excited to be here and to talk to you, esteemed panelists today about child marriage. So thank you very much for having me.
All right, so thank you, Ms. Naza. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Ms. Naza, for that brief introduction. Before we go further, I would like to let all our participants know that you can ask any questions that you have in the Q&A box. As the conversation proceeds, we'll take note of your questions, and please note who exactly your question is directed to. So you ask a question and also specify which panelist you're addressing the question to. As the conversation proceeds, we'll take the questions also. Remember, we have a special segment coming towards the end of the discussion, and also we have gifts for 2 participants. So please stay engaged. Now I'll begin with Madam Patience Ekelba. Ma'am, you are the UN Women National Programs Coordinator in Nigeria. Of course, you have a lot of insights into what work the UN structure is doing in terms of early child marriage in Nigeria. Can you please tell us, what is child marriage? And of course, we know that the COVID-19 health emergency has affected all aspects of human life. It's not just a health emergency, it's a national emergency. Can you tell us how COVID has impacted child marriage and what it is that your UN organization does in Nigeria to help stem the tide of early child marriage?
Thank you so much, Amina. Thank you so much, Whisker and partner, once again for having me. I'm going to try to just give a short definition, and I'm sure that this is what we already know, but maybe also try to put child marriage in perspective.
Madam Patient, can you hear us? We can't hear you. I'm sure Madam Patience is having a bit of difficulty with her internet connection. So while we're waiting for her to reconnect, Madam Patience, can you hear us? Can you hear me?
We can probably move to another panelist.
Yes, I think. Okay, so while Madam Patience is trying to connect back, I'll switch over to Professor Mustafa Ismail. So Professor, sir, can you tell us, you started to talk about the work that your Human Rights Commission is doing in terms of child marriage. Can you give us more information concerning your work in this very important field?
Well, we've been conducting researches for about 20 years on gender issues. And we found out from the prophetic traditions that the daughter of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Fatima, when some people wanted to marry her, they approached Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He said she was young. 3 times, some people wanted to marry her. He said she was young. And he did not marry her off until when she was 18. And according to some prophetic tradition, she was 19 when she married Ali ibn Abi Talib. Now, anybody who wants to confirm this prophetic tradition should go to At-Tabaqatul Kubra. The names of the books are in Arabic. You see, At-Tabaqatul Kubra. Then you can go also to Bukhari, Fathul Bari. There, you can also go to other sources that we'll mention later, which confirms that Nana Fatima was married off when she was 19 or 18. These prophetic traditions set the appropriate and reasonable age limit for girls to be married off, 18, 19. So this happened before the European civilization. This age limit would allow the girl to acquire education, at least up to the secondary level, isn't it? She may also, by this age, be physically mature enough to shoulder the matrimonial responsibility. And like I said earlier, there were cases brought up to the court of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, by young girls and adult women complaining of imposition of husbands on them by parents or guardians. Anybody who wants evidence on this should go to Kitab al-Bukhari. It's a compilation, it's a collection of prophetic traditions. It's second to the Quran in terms of being sources of Sharia. There is a chapter.
Professor, if I could just, the major problem we're having with the Child Rights Act in the country is more of the legislation. At the state level, most states have not domesticated it. We have about 11 states, which are mostly northern states. So in as much as the religious aspect of it is a big factor, perhaps more importantly is the socioeconomic conditions that make it prevalent in the first place. And I say this because, not everyone on this discussion is a Muslim, and they might not understand, this religious aspect that you're delving into. So to make the conversation a bit more secular, can you talk a bit about the socioeconomic conditions and poverty, and of course the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and how that has exacerbated the situation with early child marriage or child marriage in general?
Well, issues of this nature in our society, predominantly Muslim society, religions, culture, and traditions are sometimes used in order to justify some violations, some denials of rights, or to justify some harmful practices. You see, for instance, in my community, there is this cultural issue that if parents allow their daughter to start menstruation before marriage, whatever she commits, the sin is on them, you see? And sometimes they'll be quoting you wrongly, quoting or misinterpreting religious texts. So we cannot avoid delving into religious scriptures in order to explain to people. It's an issue of culture and tradition. And we should tell people that culture and tradition change. They are dynamic. They are not static. Some culture have become, some form of cultures have become obsolete. But as you talk of drivers to girl-child marriage, poverty, misunderstanding as misinterpretation of religion, you see? And this climate change, for instance, we have drought in some places. You have people cannot get what they used to get in terms of farm produce. So you cannot make ends meet. So children become a burden on them. They look for all sorts of means in order to get rid or to shirk the responsibility. So we are in order when we talk of religion because people misinterpret religion or text. In fact, if we are to go back to the scriptures, a lot of violation. Look, even during the lifetime of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, women used to gather to come to him and seek for their rights. So there is nothing wrong to talk of religion. In fact, if we don't do so, people will be misinterpreting the text to justify the girl-child marriage. So I think, like you said earlier, this COVID-19 also exacerbated the girl-child marriage issues because parents found it or find it difficult nowadays to make ends meet. They could not cater to the girls they have. In a family, you will see about 9, 5, 6 children. And the parents now, because of the countdown, because of this downturn of the COVID-19, so they will be looking for some people maybe to hand over the girls in marriage to them. So this is how this COVID-19 affects or exacerbated the issue of girl-child marriage. And also that culture, that tradition, very strong in our community. For a woman, for parents to leave their girls to start menstruation outside marriage.
Well, Professor, how can we get the, like we said earlier, from the legal review of the current state of the law, you know, the Child Rights Act, how can we get the northern governors or the northern legislators to accept this
I know there are
and enforce it?
There are attempts to domesticate it and make it a bill in my state and other state, Kano and other states, but the efforts were not successful. One, because people who should, the homework was not done properly. People who do not know, or people who know little or nothing about Islam, they champion the cause. And people use religion against them. You see, this is one of the reasons why the efforts failed in many of the states. The politicians, they want votes. They do not want to offend the electorate. And sometimes there was a time when we visited one of the governors in the northern states. When he saw me among the people from UNICEF, he was so happy. He said, I thank God there are people like you, Professor, among them. We want to do things, but people will accuse us of violating religious injunctions. But since you are here, I feel comfortable. So one of the things that those who want to domesticate these child rights acts, they should get people who are knowledgeable in the Sharia. Because
so Professor, we're a bit pressed for time. My apologies, we're pressed for time. But if I understand, pardon? If I understand what you've said, it's the messaging and of course the manner of approach. So the northern governors and the northern electorate are more likely to accept this if it comes from one of their own, and they need to be enlightened on the key issues in the bill. Yes. So thank you so much, Professor. I would like to quickly move on to Ms. Alakija, who's been doing some impactful and really important work as a social accelerator for the green economy. So Ms. Alakija, can you please tell us a bit about the impact COVID-19 has had on child marriage?
Yeah, thank you, Amina. And just to echo some of the stuff that Professor Mustafa said, a lot of the issues and predominantly you will find child marriages in regions where poverty is rife. And what COVID-19 did is accelerate that, and some communities were pushed further into poverty, essentially I remember the first time I saw a child bride, it came as such a shock to me that my colleague said to me, he said, Naza, you don't understand what somebody is thinking when they're hungry. Imagine you are a mother and or a father that, with 5 to 6 kids who haven't eaten in, let's say, 2 to 3 weeks. And the only option or the only viable option that they see is, for example, selling their daughter for a dowry in exchange for, to be able to feed the rest of their kids. Now, COVID-19, the reason why we link the two issues together is because a lot of people have lost their livelihoods. And during this period of time, the only way people were able to access finances or resources was through these traditions. And of course, to reflect on what Professor Mustafa has said, people generally, there's a lot of guilt that comes around this because, as a human being, you only ever have to see a child to understand they are a child. They do not know better. They do not know how to be a wife. They do not know how to be a mother because they're still learning how to deal with themselves. And therefore they use religious or cultural norms as excuses or as standards that they feel like they must adhere to, or use to essentially justify what they're doing. Now, how do we address these problems? How do we, of course, one of the easiest things, or the first things that comes to mind is poverty eradication. But it's also very, very important for us to educate communities, people around us, talk to people that talk to leaders within your community to explain and to understand an opening dialogue about why this is wrong, why this keeps you in a perpetual state of poverty, and you do not reach the development gains that you essentially set out to, because your community is unequal. And I think the one thing that we should probably all take away from this pandemic is that when it comes to disasters and shocks, it knows no boundaries. It doesn't know religions. It doesn't differentiate between cultures. It doesn't differentiate between origins or where you come from. It affects every single one of us. So gender inequality leads to child marriages. Child marriages leads to poverty. It keeps us in this perpetual state of poverty. So essentially, it's an intersectional issue that requires a multitude of things. That includes education, that includes, socioeconomic security, that includes that includes a lot of dialogue. So I think these are some of the things that we should probably start thinking about and enforcing right now within our immediate communities, to say, hey, let's have these conversations. This is happening. It should be something that is frowned upon, and it should be something that's openly discussed between peers. And how can we support one another in preventing this from happening over and over again?
So Ms. Alakija, your point of view is that it is a multifaceted problem, and because of that, we need to have multiple actors working together to find a lasting solution. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so I think Madam Patience Okeoba is now back online. If she's online, we could switch to her. Madam Patience, can you tell us a bit about the work that the UN structure is doing to stem the tide of child marriage across the country?
Thank you very much, Amina, and my apologies. My internet actually cut me off. I don't know how much you heard. I know I was just starting off when the internet went off. But I agree with what the other panelists have said about before I move on to say what the UN is doing, it's good to also re-emphasize the fact that we do have a big problem in our hands. We were beginning to make some progress with child marriage eradication, but I think that with what has happened, we're likely going to lose a lot of the gains that we have had. UNICEF says categorically that we're going to see like 10 million more girls who will be, at risk of child marriage as a result of this pandemic. So that tells us that this is a big problem. And I'm glad that this conversation is happening so that relevant partners can begin to think of what they can do. Just like Nazi said, it's a big problem and it is not something that any one agency can deal with. So moving on to what UN system is doing and what UN Women in particular is doing, I would say that over the years, in line with our mandates, we're supposed to set global standards. And what we have done with the Child Rights Convention is to actually work with countries to make sure that they adapt this convention to suit their own context. And I'm glad that Nigeria has, signed on to this convention. We have the Child Rights Act, like we had, and the provisions are very robust. But I think what is left is we need to do a lot of advocacy to states that have not passed this law into law. And then those who have already passed it into law, we need to begin to see enforcement. And what I mean by that is real implementation, because this is a very robust provision. And I'm sure that if every state can commit to ensuring that these provisions are well implemented, some of the challenges that we're seeing will be addressed. So apart from setting global standard, the UN has also actually mandated specific agencies to actually take this on as their responsibility. So UNICEF is doing a fantastic job around this. UNFPA is doing quite a lot. UN Women is also using her platforms and her network to do quite a lot to make sure that, you know, this issue is eradicated. We're also increasingly having to invest more into this sort of this issues. Just a few years back, the EU and UN had a joint project and decided to actually invest a lot of money into eradicating violence against women, harmful practices against women and girls, and child marriage and FGM is a particular issue that is at the center stage of that project. So I'm sure that some of you have heard about the EU's UN Spotlight Initiative. The whole objective of that goal is to ensure that these obnoxious practices against women and girls are addressed. And in Nigeria, we're privileged to be among the countries that are implementing this project. Currently, we're implementing in 6 states, 1 state per geopolitical zone. We're hoping that at the second phase, we'll be able to get more money to be able to actually go to more states to do this. But apart from this, there are lots of other initiatives that the UN agencies are taking on to address this particular issue. There's ongoing research, evidence gathering to make sure that whatever we're doing in terms of planning and implementation, we have the necessary information to be able to do what we're doing. And then, of course, there's a lot of training going on for relevant institutions. So from prevention to building institutions that are responsible to prevent this, because we believe that if the institutions are well sensitized and they understand the issues, then they're going to take it seriously. And part of the prevention work we're doing, specifically in UN Women, some years back, and I was privileged to be part of this project, there was this high level targets of first-class chiefs across Africa. And we were privileged to have one of such meetings, and it held in Lagos in 2018. Over 200 first-class chiefs and, you know, traditional rulers and religious leaders were brought together to actually lend their voice to end child marriage and FGM. And one of the outcomes of that meeting was an institution was actually created, you know, institution that is made up of traditional religious rulers called Kotla. And what they have been doing is actually taking their advocacy to high levels, including to the African Union and the rest, to actually talk about what needs to be done to eradicate early marriage, FGM, and the rest of them. So there's quite a lot going on. And then for UN Women, we take our male engagement very seriously. We have the He for She program that we run. And part of what we're doing is to make sure that men who are influencers, boys in institutions of learning and in different institutions, are able to take these issues and run with them. We know that girls are married off to men and boys. And as long as the men are on board with us, they are actually helping to champion this cause, we are sure that we'll be making progress. And we are making progress. It is true that the COVID-19 has sort of, you know, created more problems for us, but we are making progress in terms of getting alliances of people who actually believe in this cause and want to make a change. Part of what UN Women is also doing is actually, through its Generation Equality, is working with young women like yourself, and I'm happy that you are one of the UN Women mentee, although you've graduated now, and we're glad you're actually anchoring this. Part of what we're doing is actually, we want these young women to begin to champion these issues. We have a lot of feminist group who have done incredible work in the past. We have some of our mentees even in this call who have been in the forefront of this struggle. So part of what we are hoping will happen with our young people coming on board is you bringing your innovation, bringing your tact, bringing all of this new learnings, new technologies that you have to make sure that we put the spotlight on some of these issues and make sure that we actually get the sort of results that we want to see. And very recently, the executive director of UN Women actually started a conversation with girls, so adolescent girls, not just girls who are in their maybe 20s or 30s. We're now beginning to target adolescent girls. And part of what we're doing is actually to build the voices of the young girls themselves to speak about their issues. I mean, the general saying that he or she who wears the shoes knows where it pinches still holds sway in this instance. So if we build the capacity of young girls to be able to speak up for themselves, they will be able to tell us how they feel about the issues, and of course get those who should be accounting for our children actually accounting for them. I forgot at the beginning of this to actually congratulate the children of the world. I really want to congratulate you, and I want to say that there is no world without children, there's no world without girls. And I want to charge every girl out there to continue to be strong, to be resilient. We know girls who have had to run away from marriages because they know that getting into those marriages were going to take away their futures. You know, we're still encouraging all the girls out there to continue to speak against early marriage, because we know both health-wise, social-wise, and all the rest, we know the sort of negative impact that it has on girls who are forced to actually go into these marriages. I see you nodding your head. I don't know if my time is up, but just to say that.
Yeah, I was just looking. I was just looking for how to politely, interrupt your presentation.
Thank you so much.
It is obvious that there's so much work that the UN structure is doing in terms of stemming the tide of child marriage. We're so grateful for all of your hard work and devotion. And earlier you did mention that you are collaborating with Professor Mustafa, who mentioned that the people who this messaging is targeted at are more likely to accept it if people like him are on the panels that go for high-level advocacies. On that note, we're going to look at the question and answer box, and we do have a question for Professor Ismail, and this question is also from a fellow professor, Professor Stella Williams, and she asks, if the professor's research indicated that a father refused to give his daughter in marriage, why is it difficult for the issue of child marriage to follow such a good example? So Professor Ismail, if you want to, would you please answer, give a response to that question?
I beg your pardon, can you repeat the question?
Okay, so I'm just going to read it out once more. If the professor's research indicated that a father refused to give his daughter in marriage, why is it difficult for the issue of child marriage to follow such a good example?
Well, let me, in order to partly answer this question, let me take us back to the question you posed to me. Number two, how, in your opinion, can we get these states ratify the CRA, and how do we create alignment between the CRA and Islamic law as regards this issue? One, reach out to the important and effective stakeholders in the states. Like what? Like whom? Such as traditional and religious leaders and opinion leaders. Two, reach out to the progressive and proactive Islamic scholars who will be able to convince the opponents of the Child Rights Act that most of the content of the Child Rights Act are contained in the sources of Sharia. By referring to them, these sources, engage sincere and honest, vast Islamic scholars in the campaign for the domesticating of the Child Rights Act. Reach out to the state politicians, i.e. the governors, the speakers, the leading party members. These are very, very important stakeholders. But as to the question, why should, when a parent or father refuses to give the hands of his daughter in marriage for one reason or the other, I think there are a lot of prophetic tradition which says, For instance, if somebody responsible comes to marry your daughter and she's mature enough and she loves the man and he is of good character, you have no right to deny her. Because let me give you an example. A woman or a girl was forced by her father to marry somebody she did not like. She took the kid to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. They called the father to the court. The Prophet asked him, is it true that you forced a husband on your daughter? He said, yes. The Prophet said, this marriage is null and void. This marriage is null and void. And then the daughter stood up and said, "O Messenger of Allah, now I can take the husband he is trying to impose on me. But I came to court in order to show the people that the choice of husband is the responsibility of the girls, not the parents." This is what she said. Go to Fathul Bari, Kitabun Nikah, you will see this prophetic tradition, very authentic. But at the same time, the religion of Islam has also given the parents the right, when the daughters brought an irresponsible person as husband, to tell them these are the type of people you bring. They are not responsible. Try to persuade the girl not to use force. Explain to her, if you are in trouble, we are in trouble as parents. So Islam gives right to parents as well as to the children, male or female, duties and rights. So if a father refuses to marry up his daughter to the right person she chose, of good character, a responsible person, then the Sharia, Hizbah, this is what we've been doing in Kano and places. There are cases where parents even refuse to allow a daughter to marry a university lecturer, a responsible person, known by everybody. The case was taken to Hizbah, and the daughter was married up to the man. And they have children now. Because the parents sometimes they'll be looking, they just want to commercialize the issue. You see, to sell the daughters to rich people, even if they are older than the daughters. So
clearly, Professor, there's an economic angle to this problem, and also there's a lot of misconception about what Islam's stance is in terms of the legal limitations for a marriage contract. So we thank you so much for that insight. Unfortunately, we are pressed for time, so it's time for us to move to the final session of this panel discussion. I want to thank all the panelists who have given us wonderful and very insightful contributions. We're so grateful that you have taken time out of your busy schedules to join this conversation. And now I'll be handing over again to Ms. Fabia, who is going to introduce our special guest. You know, from the beginning of this discussion, she did mention, or I did mention, that we had a special session where we get to hear a real life experience from someone who is a survivor of a child marriage. So over to you, Ms. Fabia.
Thank you very much, Amina. And I just would like to ask our panelists to please stay on board, stay online. We haven't finished with you yet. We'll come back to you after we take, we'll bring Mino in now, Mino Duamwam from NIM Foundation, but we'll be asking you to give your final words and your final charges before you go. So please stay online. So Mino Duamwam from NIM Foundation, are you online? If so, can you switch on your camera so we can see you and we can move to this segment of today's webinar? Is she online?
Yes, Fabia, I'm online. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We cannot see you.
Okay.
So Mino, if you could just, okay.
Okay, can you see me now?
Yes, we can see you. We can see you. So I
Okay,
believe you
good
have some
afternoon,
special, good afternoon. I believe you have some special guests who will be sharing their stories with us.
Yes, I do. Okay, so my name is Ina Dwamwan. So can I go ahead?
Please, yes, please go ahead. Introduce yourself and share with us what we'll be seeing or hearing next.
Okay, so my name is Mina Dwamwan. I work with NIM Foundation as one of the program officers. So I'm going to be introducing two of our beneficiaries who are were child bride. One of them is still married and the other one is divorced. So I'll first introduce Shafa Bello. She was married at the age of 14 and she was in secondary school, I think just 3, when she got married. So I'll introduce her so she can tell us her story. She'll be telling this story in Hausa, and then myself and one of my colleagues here, Comfort, would try and interpret what she would try and interpret her story. Because of the Sokoto Hausa, and I'm not very conversant with the Hausa, my colleague Comfort would interpret. Thank you. Over to you, Shafa.
Thank you. She has 3 minutes, please.
Okay.
Sunana Shafa Bello, neman aure ina da shekara 14. Na ta yi sai na fuskanci matsaloli da dama haka gidan mijina. Bayan na fito ina da yare 2 sai na fito ina fatan abin da ban fatan su yi shi. Ina son in samu inda na yi dogaro da kaina don in samu musu harka yi su yi karatu kasu san irin yadda ni zama nan gaba.
Okay, so my colleague Comfort will interpret what she said.
Okay, all she was saying is she got married at the age of 14, and due to what she encountered, it wasn't a rosy marriage. And at some point she got divorced. She had 2 kids. All she's trying to do, she's struggling to see that they don't end up the way she ended up, even though she never had any chance to further education. But she's trying her best to see that her kids also get better than what she had growing up.
Okay. So I'll introduce the second beneficiary. Her name is Hawa Dauda.
Sunana Hawa Dauda. An yi mini aure ina da shekara 16. Ina da shekara 16, ina da yara 3. Ina da yara na 3 suna nan. Na samu matsala da mijina. Yanzu haka yaran suna nan wurin mahaifina. Ni kuma ina aure wani wuri. Haka nika taimaka musu da abin da ni samu suna karatu. Kuma mahaifina yana taimaka min. Yana kai su makaranta don babansu ba komi ya kai musu ba. Ni ta kai musu lalura su, karatunsu da wasu abubuwa na rayuwa. Burina nan gaba yadda ni samu kaina ban yi karatu ba tunda firamare ɗaya ne an ka wanke ni. Yanzu so naka yara na su yi karatu. Dan akwai abokaina da sun yi karatu suna nan likitoci, wasu lauyoyi, wasu malamai. Har da ƙannena akwai waɗanda annan suna karatu kuma sun ƙare suna nan suna ci gaba. To ni kuma ina son yara na su taso haka nan dan yaro na babba ya ce son ya yi abun ga karatun makarantar tuƙin jirgin sama. To shi annan ina ƙoƙarin Allah ya taimaka mini in samu abubuwan da zan taimaka musu su yi karatu. Gas su taso yadda ni taso.
So generally what Hawa is saying here is with where she ended up being that she left, she got married as soon as she left primary school. Getting into that marriage, it wasn't that rosy, though she had 3 kids from that marriage, and she got divorced. And then the kids had to go back to her parents' place to stay. She had seen her younger ones and also classmates from primary school who are doing better in life. Some lawyers, some doctors, some teachers in school, and those ones are doing well. She can see even their kids are better, but she wasn't able to have such opportunity, even though right now she's trying her best to see that she do 1 or 2 things to make sure her kids go back, get a quality education, that which she never had. Even her son told her about being a pilot, trying to go to the aviation school. She wants to see and do all that is possible within her power, within her means, to see that her child or her son gets a better education so that he doesn't end up like her. Also her daughters too, she tried to see that they also get such kind of education so that a form of education that will get them into the society to be useful and also better off than what she is right now. So what she's aiming at in the future is what she will do, struggle. Right now she's doing menial jobs, trying to see how to put things together to make sure her kids get the best of education. So far so good. That's it for Hawa. Thank you.
So that's our beneficiary story, Fabia.
Thank you very much, Mino. Those were really, I think, moving and powerful stories. And I think just from us, listening in on this side, we want to thank, the women for sharing their stories and for, coming on and be willing to just share and really put a face to this conversation. And we want them to know that we wish them well and that it's not over for them yet. And, life still holds so much in store. And I know that some of the programs that you run at NEEM is sort of focused on supporting them. And so if you could briefly just like to tell us a bit about the work of the NEEM Foundation and what you're doing with women like Hawa who've shared their stories today.
Okay, so currently we're working, thank you. Currently, we're working on the EU-UN Spotlight Initiative in Sokoto and Adamawa. So we're providing second chance education to people like Shefa and Hawa in just to give them a second chance to better their lives by providing them with basic literacy and numeracy. We also provide them with mental health and psychosocial support because we know that a lot of these people go through a lot of, survivors go through a lot of mental health issues. So NEEM Foundation is supporting these beneficiaries with psychosocial support. We do a lot of expressive therapy through art just to improve their social-emotional well-being. We're also supporting these beneficiaries with livelihood and vocational skills for them to be able to be independent women and girls in the society. And this support is also, we're getting this support from UN Women as well. So that's basically what we do to improve the lives of child brides as well as other survivors of SGBV. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mino. Thank you to you and to Comfort and to everyone who is working to sort of support this cause and create the practical steps in terms of providing solutions and support to women such as Hawa and Shefa. Thank you very much for being here as well and for collaborating with us as partners in bringing this event to life. Thank you so much. So if I can just segue back to the panelists. Thank you. And I think where time is fast spent, like Amina said, but we would like to just take one more question and tie that into your final closing statements, please. For Naza, we have a comment, our question that says, this has been interesting so far, thank you. but we want to know a little bit more about the impact of climate change on child marriage. So if you could just take that, Naza, as you also give your final charge on what you would like to see, because we'd like to end this conversation with solutions. So if you could just take that issue briefly and then wrap up with your final charge. And then I will come to Madam Patience for your final charge on this issue, what you would like to see done. Today we have an audience, and this conversation will also be uploaded to our YouTube page so people can access it, and we will share it widely. We want to know how we can move the needle forward, and the same closing charge to Professor Mustafa. So starting with Naza, please. I hope she's still online. Yes, I think I see you.
So I think talking about climate change and the climate crisis, just with gender equality, it is an intersectional issue. It affects a multitude of things. It affects, every single person all over the world. And what it's starting to do is unravel a lot of the development that has been, the progress that has been made over the past 75 years. As these things start to unravel, the people that are most marginalized, and women often fall into that category in parts of the world, are at the forefront of these problems. So they are affected way before everybody else. Child marriage, climate change often results in migration. You have to move because you don't have access to resources, you don't have access to food, you don't have access to a stable home. And these become that much worse when it's a natural disaster. So there's two types of it. So you have the incremental problems that Professor Mustafa touched on before, with people not having access to water to irrigate their crops, therefore they have to migrate somewhere else. And again, daughters and children, young girls become the point of, for example, dowry, or they become the victims essentially of the problems that families begin to face. Not just because the parents don't necessarily want to deal with them, but also sometimes the parents seem that they're safer with with somebody, with a husband, or with somebody that's a little bit older who can provide a better life for them, not realizing the impact it's having on them as a child, unable to carry out the duties of a wife and a woman who would normally be able to do these things over the age of 18. Now, my closing statement, first of all, I would like to thank the ladies that shared their stories with us. I can't imagine that it's easy to be able to talk about these things. So thank you, and we appreciate you so much, and we will do whatever we can in our strength to eradicate this problem, because it is a travesty. The things that we can do as people is invest in girls, invest in their education, empower them, give them the tools to be able to control their own lives, and to be able to do things that we all want for our own kids, for ourselves: success, happiness, the ability to be able to do things that that gives us our independence. So education, investing in their protection, investing in equitable access for everybody, especially girls, especially women. These are some of the things that I think are most important in going forward after this pandemic and addressing child marriages and achieving gender equality. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Naza. Thank you so much for your words, and thank you so much for your insights, and for sharing your hopes for the way forward. I would like to ask Madam Patience to please also very, very briefly, please, as we're now out of time, your final closing charge statement.
Yeah, thank you so much, Fabia. Thank you to all the panelists and the ladies who also shared their stories. I think what is important is we need to continue to create platforms for women and girls who have experienced child marriage to share their stories, because putting a face to the issues always has a way of amplifying the message. So as much as possible, let us continue to create platforms for people who have gone through this to share their stories. Then secondly, beyond the COVID in Nigeria, we know that insecurity has become another pandemic, and it has just worsened the situation. From government to civil society to women's group to every traditional religious leaders, we all need to come up with special measures of protecting our girls because the situation is becoming more tense, and the chances that a lot more girls will get married off as children, is becoming evidenced by the day. I also want to say that we need to continue to demand accountabilities from our leaders, from the federal to the states to the local government. We have laws, we have policies. We need to make sure that these policies and laws work for us. We also need to make sure that there are services for women who have suffered any form of child marriage or the consequences of child marriage. We are aware that on an annual basis, at least 20,000 new cases of VVF happens in Nigeria. And this of course means that we need more services. It means that we need more beds. It means that we need more resources and all of these things. We need to prevent child marriage because it is possible. It is a violation of the rights of children, and we all need to work together to make sure that we are able to end this. And I also want to say lastly that it's a complex situation, and we need multiple actions to be able to address them. We need to sensitize people. We need to make sure we keep our girls in schools. We're happy that at least in some parts of the world, the lockdown has been called off. We need to make sure our girls go back to school. We also need to continue to empower women. When women are empowered, they will be able to resist and negotiate when their children are to be given out as brides to older men or even children. So thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to have been part of this conversation.
Thank you very much, Madam Patience. And finally, last but not the least, our he for she and male allies. Very happy to have had you here, sir. Professor Mustafa Ismail. Hello, Prof.
Are you hearing me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Or you're muted. Sorry, you need to unmute.
Hello? Can you
yes, we can hear you now. We can hear you loud and clear.
Now, this issue of child marriage is, of course, a harmful practice. It's so rampant in my society. We should learn from the mistakes made earlier. If you come to Kano, you will see women's centers. Initially, they were created for women who were married off at tender ages or age, and the marriages were not successful, and they had no skills to fall back to. So the governments in those days, they created centers to provide second chance for them to carry on with their secondary school studies up to higher institutions in Kano State, for instance. This child marriage, in addition to the truncating of the child's education, it also creates another physical and health problems like VVF. Here in Kano, there was a time some organizations from America, they came to treat about 125 women with VVF, and it was successful. They were healed, they could now control urine, they could lead normal life, but that VVF was as a result of the child marriage. They were not strong enough. They were minors, you see. And another adverse effect of child marriage is that they remove them from schools and they divorce them.
Yes.
They come to our center, for instance, complaining. After divorce, nobody to take care of them. We'll have to take them to court sometimes to Hisbah. So we should learn from these mistakes to allow the girls to acquire education, at least up to secondary school level. That is once they are 18, 19. In Islam, education is mandatory. It's mandatory for both male and female. There are prophetic traditions, even the revelation. We talk religion because the people are misinformed about the position of Islam. You get my point. So now we should be assured we are not going against the teachings of Islam if we allow our girls to learn to go to schools up to at least 18 years. That is when they finish secondary school.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So thank you for having me. I feel honored to be invited to this forum, and I look forward to working with Whisker in order to engage in the advocacy for the enlightenment of my people, more especially in the North. This is very, very timely. I think we are really appreciative of your efforts. Thank you very much. And I look forward, the Center for Human Rights in Islam is looking forward to working with you in future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you. And it has been like our honor to also have you grace this occasion today. Thank you so much. And I want to thank Amina Yugudev for anchoring the conversations very nicely, and for doing a fantastic job as a moderator in trying to shape what is obviously not a very easy conversation, and where there is so much to say and so much to learn. So thank you so much, Amina, as well, for your support and for, as I said, navigating the conversations brilliantly. We have come to the end of the webinar, and I just want to recap before we bring this session to a close. We set out to achieve a number of objectives in hosting this event. We wanted to create more awareness for the issue of child marriage in Nigeria. Riding on the platform today, which is a national day recognizing children in Nigeria. So we wanted to use the opportunity to create awareness on this issue. We wanted to take forward the conversation which we commenced a couple of years ago when we decided, when Whisker decided to add this issue to one of the numerous things in the area of gender equality and empowerment that we advocate for. We wanted to show and highlight what work has already been done, and to show that there is more work to be done on this issue. In terms of solutions, today we've been assured that some progress has been made, and been charged with a number of things. One, to bring in new voices to the conversation, particularly young voices. And we've tried to do that also today, just in highlighting a diversity in the panel. We wanted to show the importance of having male allies, he for she's, in driving these conversations, and to also, discuss new triggers, the new triggers that are in danger of slowing down the progress that has been made already. Triggers such as the pandemic last year, COVID-19, the shadow pandemics that arose out of COVID-19, and of course, climate change. We have heard that we should be investing in girls, empowering them, and enabling them to be able to do better, particularly through the tool of education. There is a consensus that 18 is and should be the minimum age for any young girl to be married. We've been made to understand that we still need, there's a multifaceted approach to this issue, particularly the engagement of stakeholders across multiple platforms, from religious stakeholders to those who obviously make our laws, to the executive who govern and enact and enforce those laws. We want to obviously thank again our distinguished and esteemed panelists and discussants, Olamide, for setting the scene through the review of the Child Rights Act, which we hope will be conversations to ensure that at the very least it's enacted or rather domesticated in all 36 states. And we hope that that will happen sooner rather than later. We want to thank Patience Akerba, Naza Lakija, Professor Mustafa Ismail, and the team from NEEM Foundation, and of course our beneficiaries of the NEEM Foundation for sharing their wonderful stories. And finally, just to say at the start, we said we will be giving out some gifts. Olamide has authored a book called The Child Rights Act Simplified. It's a book that every institution, universities, schools, primary schools, and of course parents should have in their hands as teach their young ones today, Children's Day, about their rights. And we'll be giving out 2 copies of that book to the first 2 people, attendees who signed up to this event. And we'll be looking at our list. We have the participants list, and we'll be emailing you and advising you how to get your book. So all that's left for me to say now is to thank you all on behalf of the founder and chairperson of WISCA, Mrs. Amina Oyabula, the convener of this event, and all our lovely participants. Thank you so much for the chats, keeping the chats buzzing, keeping the Q&A and the questions coming. We will be shortly uploading this conversation onto our WISCA YouTube channel. I believe it's WISCA Nigeria, and please engage with the conversations and share it widely. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy your day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you, Ms. Patience. Thank you, Naza. Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Amina. Well done. Thank you, Olamide.
So much.
Thank you.
Thank you.